Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to the brutal winters of Victorian-era London, where the snow may fall like a dream, but reality slaps a lot harder. Imagine stepping outside and seeing your entire street blanketed in soft white, except it's not soft, it's not white, and it definitely isn't clean. It's grey, crusted with soot, and stained with a sticky mix of horse droppings and chimney dust. You take one step and instantly regret it. Your boots leather, cracked, too thin for the cold squelch down into slush that smells like 1,000 fireplaces and a week's worth of spoiled stew. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time. I want to know what winter looks like where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first breath of London's winter air burns just a little, the way stale tobacco smoke might catch in your throat. It's cold, sure, but what makes it worse is the ever-present fog mixed with soot. The chimneys are going full tilt coal fires in every home, shop, pub, and laundry. The result is what Victorians call a London particular, a dense, smoky, yellowish haze that settles in like an uninvited guest and refuses to leave. You watch kids hurling snowballs at one another in the street, but even their play looks half-hearted. Their fingers are red, raw, and bear gloves are a luxury in these parts. And the snow they're scooping up isn't the clean, powdery kind from a postcard. It's filthy. Even the rooftops wear it like an ugly winter hat grey, crusted edges dripping slush into alleyways. The snow isn't just cold, it's heavy with grime. Mainstream historians agree that by the 19th century, London was the largest city on Earth, home to over 6 million souls by the end of the Victorian era. That's a lot of people burning a lot of coal, all of it dumping soot into the sky. And thanks to the Industrial Revolution, factories joined in with their own smoky contributions. So when it snowed, that falling purity didn't stand a chance. It soaked up the filth of the air before even touching the ground. By the time it reached the cobblestones, it looked more like someone had emptied the contents of a dirty mop bucket. And it wasn't just the street, so no. Indoors wasn't much better. You'd think you'd escape the soot by stepping into someone's home, but unless you were rich enough to afford constant cleaning and fresh wallpaper, your walls bore smudges of smoke, your curtains smelled like burnt toast, and your teeth picked up that same acrid tang. It's no wonder wealthy families started building extra rooms just for airing out clothes. But you, living in the working-class quarters of Whitechapel or Southwark, you don't get that luxury. Your window doesn't even seal properly. You push rags into the gaps to keep the wind from howling through, and the snow doesn't care. It sneaks in anyway through the gaps in the shutters, under the door, even through the ceiling on a bad night. Historians still argue whether this environmental mess directly influenced the rise in certain Victorian health issues like bronchitis and consumption, what we now call tuberculosis. But living through it, you don't need a doctor to tell you this air isn't good for anyone's lungs. A fringe but fascinating tidbit: there were actual newspaper complaints in the 1860s about the snow being too ugly to be festive. That's right, Londoners were so fed up with dirty snow that they wrote letters about it. And there were snow-themed fashion trends too. Women wore rubber, soled boots trimmed with fur, not for warmth, but to look cute while ankle deep in grime. The irony? Their skirts soaked up just as much slop as your boots. As you trudge across the street, dodging a slushy horse cart splash, you spot a chimney sweep brushing down from a second-story roof, black soot tumbling down like confetti from some morbid parade. He's maybe 10 years old. No coat, no gloves, just a scarf tied twice around his neck, and soot smudged across his cheeks. He gives you a wave, cheerful somehow, then disappears through a roof hatch like a Dickensian Batman. You duck into a corner bakery, hoping for a moment of warmth. The scent of bread is nearly lost under the sharp tang of coal. The baker apologizescal dust got into the last batch of loaves. He still sells them anyway. Hunger, after all, doesn't care much about flavor. Outside again, the snow crunches under your feet, but not in the satisfying way. It's brittle, icy, laced with bits of broken brick and ash. You slip more than once, catching yourself on gas lampposts and strangers alike. One elderly woman mutters something about it being a nasty winter. You nod. There's no such thing as a nice one here. And when you look up, past the soot-shrouded sky, You think for just a second maybe snow used to be beautiful. Maybe once upon a time it glimmered like powdered sugar under a blue sky. But here, in the thick of Victorian London's smoke-choked streets, even snow can't stay clean. It falls grey, it lands black, and by morning, it's nothing but slush. And you've only been out for an hour. The farther you walk, the colder it gets, and the closer you drift toward the River Thames, the worse that cold begins to bite. The air down here is damp, more raw than crisp. You can feel it burrowing into your sleeves and clinging to your bones like a second, unwelcome skin. Your breath fogs in front of your face in great puffs, and every step you take crunches against the frost-glazed path. Welcome to London's icy underbelly, where the river, like everything else in this city, is both beautiful and deadly. The Thames is a beast in winter. Not a quiet, frozen-over postcard scene, but a hulking, half-choked artery of commerce and grime. Still, on the coldest years of the century, something strange happens. It slows, thickens, freezes. In some stretches, the river locks up tight enough that people actually walk across it. They skate, dance, gamble, and roast chestnuts right on its glassy surface. You've stumbled into what they used to call a frost fair. These frost fairs were rare by Victorian times. The last one technically happened in 1814, but memories linger. Old-timers still tell stories of when elephants were marched across the ice and pop-up taverns bloomed like mushrooms on the frozen river. The idea seems absurd now, as you peer across its current, sluggish form, but you do see clusters of brave souls testing the thinner sheets near the banks, trying to chip ice for household use, or fishing for pennies thrown by the superstitious. Historians still argue whether those frost fairs were truly joyful or dangerously desperate. After all, a frozen Thames meant port closures, lost wages, and food shortages. But to the average Londoner, it was also a momentary escape, something almost magical in a bleak, smoky world, a place where the rules thawed out, even as the ice solidified beneath their boots. You're not brave enough to walk on it yourself, which is wise. Victorian ice didn't come with safety measures. People fell through all the time, children mostly, and if they vanished under the current, they were rarely found. The dark water devoured them with a silence that barely rippled. One particularly eerie moment sneaks up on you. A chunk of river ice drifts by, and on top of it, a dead goose, stiff as a board, frozen mid-waddle. The sight freezes you in place. Not because of fear, but because even nature seems caught in a slow-motion collapse. And this chill, it isn't just skin-deep anymore. Your boots are soaked through. Your fingers have gone past the ache stage into the realm of weird, fuzzy numbness. You pause beside a barge where dockhands work through the morning, their breath rising in steamy clouds, their shoulders hunched. They're breaking the ice with long poles, just to get their boats moving again. One of them curses loudly, then laughs it off when he notices your stare. You get used to it, he says, chipping frost from his moustache. You don't believe him. A quirky detail here. Some Victorian Londoners believed that drinking gin could warm the blood, enough to survive these frigid riverfront days. Gin palimpsest those glittering dens of cheap liquor, and class theatre did brisk business in the winter. One notable tavern even offered hot gin soup, which sounds comforting until you realise it was mostly boiling water, bad gin, and a pinch of pepper. That's your dinner, if you're lucky. You duck into one such establishment to thaw out just long enough to stop your teeth from chattering. The warmth feels borrowed, fleeting. The fire crackles, but you're never sure if it's the wood or the creaking bones of the place. A fiddler plays near the hearth. You hear someone coughing behind you, wet, rattling, miserable. You decide it's time to leave. Back on the river's edge, the cold feels even worse now that your body had a taste of warmth. Your clothes layered, though they maybe offer little protection. Wool trousers, a threadbare shirt, and a coat with buttons that don't quite meet in the middle. Everything's damp. No wonder you keep moving. If you stop too long, you just might freeze. As you continue along the Thames, you pass by Blackfriars Bridge, where the ice creeps along the arches in creeping white veins. A group of ragged children cluster beneath it, their faces red from wind and crying. One of them clutches a stick of frozen bread. You look away before you start to feel too much. This part of the city was always colder. The moisture from the river clings to every brick, every rail, every breath. Some say it's because of the wind, funneling in from the North Sea and collecting between the buildings. Others whisper older stories that the Thames is haunted and its ghosts prefer winter. that when the fog rolls in and the ice spreads out, the past walks the streets. You chuckle at that idea, mostly to break the silence in your head. But deep down, something about this place does feel haunted. Maybe not by phantoms, but by hardship. Every puddle that freezes, every finger that turns purple from exposure, every cracked lip and stiff legit, all adds up to a collective ache. London winters hurt. And here, near the river, they hurt worst. As evening creeps in, yes, already, it's barely past 3 you watch as the lamplighters make their rounds. Gaslight flickers to life against the grey, adding just enough glow to see your breath again. The city exhales as one. Everyone trudges home. Or towards some version of home, anyway. You take one last look at the river, now shrouded in mist and half concealed beneath a crust of forming ice. It's quiet now. The kind of quiet that only comes with winter, when the world folds in on itself and dares you to survive another night. And the Thames, ancient and unknowable, just keeps flowing. You push deeper into the city now, away from the river and into the lungs of Victorian London, but those lungs are clogged. Not with smoke this time, though it's always hovering, but with fog. Thick, mustard yellow, sour-tasting fog that rolls through the streets like a living thing. Londoners call it pea soup, but don't be fooled. It smells nothing like food and everything like damp coal, rotting fish, and the sickly tang of industrial waste. It's disorienting in the worst way. You can't see more than a few feet in front of you. Street lamps glow faintly like dying embers behind a veil of grease. Horses appear out of nowhere with snorting nostrils and sudden hoofbeats, pulling carriages whose wheels grind over invisible cobblestones. The fog wraps around you, clinging to your coat, your hair, your eyelashes. Even blinking feels grimy. The Victorians had a name for these choking fogs. London fogs, or London particulars. And though fog has always existed, the 19th century made it monstrous. All that coal burning from homes, factories and trains filled the air with sulfur dioxide. Add in moist river air and freezing temperatures, and you get a sticky, acidic soup that settles over the city for days. Historians agree, this wasn't just weather, it was man-made. One of the first human-generated environmental disasters. You try to walk faster, but you keep bumping into people faces suddenly appearing from the mist like ghosts, just as startled as you are. One man drops a parcel and curses, not because it's shattered, but because he can't even see where it went. You pass a woman clutching a handkerchief over her mouth, mascara tears streaking down her face from irritation, even though it's the 1870s, and she's probably using lamp soot and elderberry juice, not Maybelline. There's something deeply eerie about it all. Even sound changes in this fog. Footsteps seem louder, closer, coughs echo, bells ring hollow. You start to feel like you've stepped outside time, like this could be 1852 or 1898. And it wouldn't matter because fog is the great equalizer. It blurs the streets, the signs, even the faces of the city itself. Quirky tidbit for you. Victorians sometimes tried to ward off fog with bonfires in the street. Yep, just light a huge open flame and hope it clears the air. Of course it didn't. If anything, it made the fog thicker. But it gave people something to huddle around. And in a winter like this, that was reason enough. The real problem? Breathing. Your lungs hurt. The fog doesn't just sting, it feels like it's scratching your throat from the inside. You cough without meaning to, joining the chorus around you. This isn't a rare experience either. In the worst winters, the fog was so bad it entered homes and schools. Children fainted in classrooms. People walked into canals. There were reports reel once of individuals collapsing on the street simply because their lungs gave out. Historians still argue whether the fog directly caused long-term neurological effects. One theory suggests extended exposure may have worsened memory or mood disorders among urban poor. And honestly, you can believe it. Try spending 3 days in this pea soup and not losing your grip a little. You reach Fleet Street now, one of the city's busiest arteries, but you wouldn't know it. The fog has muffled even the clatter of horse hooves. You pass a newspaper boy yelling out headlines, though you can barely see the stack in his hands. His voice is cracking, maybe from cold, or maybe from the sharpness of the air. Either way, he keeps shouting. You nearly collide with a blind man and his guide, who chuckles at your surprise. "Don't worry, love," he says. "You see less than I do today." He's not wrong. You don't know how anyone gets anywhere in this mess. Another thing you notice is smell becomes more important than sight. You begin navigating by scent: pipe smoke, wet wool, roast chestnuts, horse manure, the bakery you just passed, the public toilet you wish you hadn't. It's like your nose is working overtime because your eyes are on strike. You press on, scarf wrapped high, hands stuffed in your armpits for warmth. You pass by a lamplighter, leaning dangerously from a ladder as he works the gaslight above your head. It barely makes a difference. The glow is immediately swallowed by the soup, reduced to a dull halo in the void. He gives you a nod, his face lined with soot. You wonder if he can see anything from up there, or if he's just lighting by memory now. A carriage screeches nearby. Something's gone wrong. Maybe the driver took a wrong turn. Maybe he hit someone. You hear shouting, but it's already fading into the blur. You're reminded again that winter fog wasn't just inconvenient, it was deadly. People lost their way, wandered into danger, got trampled or froze in alleyways they thought were shortcuts. The fog made familiar streets feel foreign, like the city itself had turned against you. A dog trots past you out of nowhere, skinny, shivering, and clearly lost. You call softly to it, but it vanishes into the mist like a ghostly messenger. You're not even sure it was real. You pass by a churchyard. The iron gate is icy under your fingers. Fog curls around the gravestones like long, cold fingers. You stop and stare, chilled for reasons beyond temperature. This place, these stones, they've stood here through countless winters. You wonder how many names were added just from exposure, how many from coughing too long in the fog. You don't stay to find out. Your body aches now not just from the cold, but from tension, constantly scanning the fog for shapes, obstacles, danger. Your shoulders have been hunched for hours. You force yourself to loosen up, but you still feel hunted, even if there's nothing behind you but vapor and silence. And then, just like that, you step into a pocket of clearer air, a small one, no bigger than a room. The fog parts for a moment, and you see an old woman sweeping her steps with a frost-crusted broom. She doesn't even glance up. Maybe she's used to this. Maybe everyone is. You take a breath. It tastes awful, but for a second, you're grateful to see anything at all. Your limbs ache, your breath fogs, and your face feels like it's been scrubbed raw with sandpaper. But still, you keep going. Because there's no such thing as staying comfortably indoors, not in your situation. You're just trying to get warm again, trying to survive another hour in this frozen jungle of gaslights and chimney pots. And what better defense against the cold than layering up in Victorian style? You duck into a side alley and tug your coat tighter, though coat might be too generous a word. It's wool, sure, but the itchy kind that somehow lets wind in and keeps moisture trapped. Your sleeves are fraying, the buttons mismatched, and the linings coming loose. This isn't fashion, it's desperation. Layering is the name of the game in this era. Victorian fashion didn't just dictate style, it decided your survival. Under your coat, there's a second-hand flannel shirt, a moth-nibbled waistcoat, and an undergarment you suspect once belonged to someone else's uncle. Every piece adds weight, but very little warmth. Your stockings are wool, too lumpy and sagging, and your boots, worn, thin-soled, already soaked through. For women, things are even worse. Picture corsets made of whalebone, laced over cotton shifts, all tucked beneath petticoats and crinoline frames. None of it insulated, all of it suffocating. Fashion dictated that women should look like human hourglasses, even while trudging through sleet. Historians still argue whether these winter wardrobes contributed to female fainting spells, or if that was just dramatized etiquette. But between shallow breaths, heavy skirts, and snow-stained hemlines, it's hard to imagine anyone staying upright for long. You pass a woman adjusting her bonnet in a shop window. Her gloved hands shake as she tightens her ribbon. Her boots have buttons up the side, more decorative than useful. You watch her balance delicately on the curb, before a passing carriage sloshes grey water all over her hemline. She doesn't even flinch, just sighs. Now here's a weird one. In particularly harsh winters, some Victorians stuffed newspapers into their clothes for extra insulation. A few pages from the Times down your shirt? Congratulations, you're warmer, and marginally better informed. There were even reports of people lining their shoes with pages from Charles Dickens' novels, giving new meaning to the phrase, well read. You decide to stop in at a second-hand shop, what they called rag and bone, delirst to see if there's anything warmer available. Inside, the air smells of damp wool, coal tar soap, and mildew. Clothes hang limply from pegs. their fabrics faded, their collars stained. A bearded man behind the counter eyes you, then gestures silently toward a rack of winter garments. You thumb through. A cracked oilskin, a lady's fur muff with half the fur missing, and something labelled a military surplus greatcoat that looks like it's fought more winters than you have. You try it on anyway. It's heavy, smells faintly of mothballs and pipe smoke, but for a moment, it feels like armour. The shopkeeper nods, and after a few borrowed shillings from your last errand, you leave the shop warmer than before but now dragging around an extra 5 pounds of history on your shoulders. Back outside, you notice something strange. Everyone looks the same, not literally, but in outline. The layers, the coats, the bundled scarves, they make everyone into squat, faceless silhouettes. You pass a baker, a beggar, and a butcher, but you wouldn't know who was who until they speak. Winter in Victorian London doesn't just strip away warmth, it strips identity. And those lucky enough to have fireplaces still aren't comfortable. Most homes only had 1 or 2 hearths, usually in the kitchen or sitting room. Bedrooms were freezing. There's a reason people wore nightcaps, not for style, but because losing heat from your head could mean frostbitten ears by morning. You reach your own lodgings, a rented room above a cobbler's shop. Inside, the walls sweat with damp. You press your hand to the brick and feel it sucking heat from your skin. You light a candle. There's no firewood left tonight. Instead, you blow gently on your hands, shake the snow from your shoulders, and brace yourself for another long, slow thaw. Here's a fringe detail for you. Some people, in a desperate attempt to stay warm, used bricks they'd heat them in the oven and tuck them under blankets at night. Others stuffed their mattresses with straw, or even hot onions, though that was more rumour than routine. Either way, the battle against the cold required creativity and a very flexible nose. Historians agree that the Victorian obsession with propriety-tight collars, stiff hats, clean cuffs made enduring winter even harder. You couldn't just wrap yourself in a blanket and call it a day. You were expected to look presentable while slowly freezing to death. And so every man, woman and child shuffled through the frost, looking more like a formal dinner guest than a survivalist. Outside, the snow starts falling again, more of a drizzle, really. A lazy swirl of ash-coloured flakes that settle into your coat like a final insult. You brush them off. They come back. Eventually, you stop bothering, and when you finally crawl under your blanket that night, wearing every layer you own, the air still bites. Your breath clouds the air above your face. Your toes are numb. The blanket feels like paper, and all you can do is curl tighter and hope tomorrow brings just a little more sooner. At the very least, a fire that's already lit. Morning comes, but the light feels like it forgot to arrive. The sky outside your cracked window is the colour of tin, and the frost on the inside of the glass makes it look like you're living inside a snow globe, just without the charm. Your breath fogs as soon as you exhale, and your blanket, still clutched tight around your shoulders, offers little defence against the cold that crept in overnight. Welcome to another day in your icebox tenement. You sit up slowly, joints stiff, fingers reluctant to bend. You didn't sleep so much as doze in cycles, half awake, listening to the groans of wood contracting in the cold, and the constant wheeze of someone coughing through the thin wall beside you. That's the sound that never stops here. Not traffic, not laughter, just coughs, raspy and wet, echoing from neighbouring rooms like a percussive warning. These tenements crowded, poorly built, and always damp air home to thousands just like you. The cold doesn't just seep in through cracks in the woodwork, it hangs in the air like a parasite. The stone floors suck the warmth from your soles, and the single fireplace down in the common kitchen hasn't been lit yet. You know, because no smoke curls from the flue outside, and the air doesn't carry the sweet, sharp scent of burning coal. You pull on your layer still damp from yesterday. Wool never quite dries in this weather. It just clings, holds the cold close. There's a bucket in the corner with a film of ice across the top. That's your wash water. You crack it with your elbow and try not to hiss when the cold hits your skin. You're not bathing just enough of a splash to be marginally less grimy. Hygiene is a battle in the winter. Warm water costs coal, and coal costs more than you earned all last week. Historians agree that urban overcrowding in Victorian London reached alarming heights, especially in winter, when people crammed together in smaller rooms just to conserve heat. It didn't work. All it did was spread illness. One sneeze, one cough, and suddenly half the building was in bed with the chills. Or worse, couldn't be in bed, because they had to work. You head down the stairwell, watch your step. The ice on the wood makes every tread a death trap. There's no railing, no light. You hear someone already up downstairs, hacking like they've swallowed chimney soot. You probably have. Here's a curious bit. Some of the more desperate renters would use oilcloth or even old carpets to hang over their door frames and window spore man's insulation. But the mildew smell those things collected made the room smell like a shipwreck. Still, a stuffy, smelly room was better than one that felt like an open barn. Down in the shared kitchen, a woman you barely know stares at a small pile of firewood like it's gold bullion. She's got 3 kids and no kindling. She's breaking twigs from an old chair. No one says anything. This is what you do, now burn whatever will catch. Your own boots might be next if things get bad enough. Breakfast is porridge, if you're lucky. Cold, thick as paste. You eat it anyway. Someone else is trying to boil tea, but the coals aren't hot enough. It tastes like water that's merely considered the idea of flavour. And then it's time to leave again. Because whether or not you're warm, whether or not you slept, there's work. There's always work. Even in the coldest weather. Especially in the coldest weather. And outside, it's no better than yesterday. The streets are lined with fellow sufferers, hunched figures in wool and rags, moving slowly, deliberately, the way injured animals walk. You pass a woman scrubbing steps with water that instantly freezes. Her brush slides over the ice like a skater. She doesn't stop. She just works through it. It's a living, barely. And you? You've got errands. Maybe you're delivering messages. Maybe you're selling scraps. Maybe you're looking for someone who'll pay you a shilling to stand in line on their behalf. Whatever it is, it means being out there. You pass by a workhouse gate. Its iron bars frosted over like ribs. Inside, a line of men wait for bread and labour. The workhouse is no refuge, but at least it's marginally warmer than sleeping outdoors. Historians still argue whether these institutions were designed more for punishment than aid. And from the outside, that question answers itself. You don't go there, unless you have to. Midday arrives, and with it, a moment of surreal beauty sunlight hits a patch of ice just right, and for one instant, the world looks like crystal. It lasts 5 seconds before a man slips on it and curses loud enough to make pigeons scatter. Quirky tidbit? Victorian landlords sometimes hung up signs in tenement stairwells that read, "No spitting." They weren't worried about manners, they were trying to prevent the spread of tuberculosis. It didn't work. TB was the ghost in every hallway, and winter was its favourite season. You spend the day in motion. Not because you want to, but because you must. Standing still means cold. Moving means marginal warmth. By the time the sun starts to fall around 3:30, thanks to the season, you're back on your street, watching your breath twist like a ribbon in the dimming air. Someone's built a fire in a barrel at the end of the alley. You crowd around it with strangers who don't bother making eye contact. You all pretend not to see the pickpocket among you, or the woman chewing on dried bread, or the child holding their hands out so close to the flame it should hurt. The city grows quieter again, but not peacefully. It's just slowing down, like the blood in your fingertips. You head back to your room, already planning which layers you'll wear to bed, how tightly you'll wrap your scarf, which parts of your body you can let go cold to save the others. This isn't a night to dream, it's a night to endure. You're up before the sun this time, but that's not saying much. Sunrise in a Victorian London winter barely counts. It's more like a slow unblacking of the sky, a shift from pitch to charcoal grey. You roll out from under your layers like you're peeling off a shell. Every muscle resists. Your knees crack. Your toes feel wooden. But work doesn't care how frozen your joints are. It only cares that you show up. Out on the streets, the frost is back with a vengeance. Each breath cuts down your throat like you're inhaling knives wrapped in cobwebs. The cobblestones glisten treacherously, and ice coats every handrail, gutter and boot print from the day before. You begin the day's journey to work if you're lucky enough to have it. And that's the thing about being poor in Victorian London. Cold doesn't just make you miserable, it makes you expendable. If you're too slow, too weak, too sick to show up for your shift, there's someone hungrier and colder waiting to take your place. You're headed toward one of the match factories today, or perhaps the brewery, or the canal, where ice needs breaking so barges can still pass. Or maybe the stable's no shortage of dung to shovel. Doesn't matter. The labour's the same. Hard, repetitive, underpaid, and completely unforgiving. The only difference is how much it makes your fingers bleed. In the match factories, children and women hunch over boxes for hours in unheated rooms, dipping sticks into white phosphorus deadly stuff. Phossy jaw, they called it, when your teeth rotted from the inside and your jawbone crumbled. Historians agree it was one of the more grotesque workplace hazards of the era. And in winter, your hands worked slower, your skin cracked, and the phosphorus got under your nails that much easier. You make it to the job site. A man with a clipboard nods at you. No greeting, just a list of tasks. You're assigned to hauling buckets of water across a partially frozen yard. The ice is so thin it breaks under your boots, soaking your socks. Again, the buckets are metal so cold they burn. You wrap your fingers in rags, but they're already stiff. Every time you lift one, it sloshes and spills down your front. Now imagine doing this for 12 hours. And yet, the alternative is worse. No job means no money. No money means no food. No fire, no hope. That's why people work until their fingers split open, or their lungs seize from the chill. That's why your friend James, a chimney sweep no older than 14, has bruises across his ribs from slipping on icy tiles. He still shows up every morning with soot in his eyelashes and a cough that rattles the window panes. You stop briefly to eat a heel of bread and a slice of cold potato. It's so stiff with cold you could use it as a bludgeon. You chew it anyway. A rat scurries past. You don't flinch. They're just another part of the landscape. And here's a curious detail. In winter, coal portersmen who carried sacks of coal from barge to cellar sometimes wore iron-toed boots, not for safety, but to crack the ice as they walked. They'd stomp the ground in a rhythm like walking drum beats. You pass a few today, their trousers dusted with soot, their footsteps musical against the ice. Historians still argue whether Victorian industry ever truly acknowledged the toll winter took on workers. Official records mention accidents, frostbite, machinery slips, hypothermia, but it's always framed as the cost of doing business. Workers were expected to just cope. Employers rarely adjusted hours or improved conditions, even when the Thames froze solid. By afternoon, your hands are raw and useless. You dip them into lukewarm water from a kettle and hiss through your teeth. The pain is worse than the cold was. But for a few minutes, you can feel your fingers again. You flex them slowly, afraid of what the skin might do. Split, peel, you've seen it happen. The man next to you says nothing, just glances at your hands and nods in sympathy. He holds up his own. 3 fingertips are wrapped in dirty rags. One is missing entirely, probably crushed by something frozen and heavy weeks ago. He didn't stop working, and then you're back at it. Hauling, lifting, stacking, dragging. Your breath is loud in your ears. You're not sure how many hours pass because time means nothing, here just the angle of the light and the stiffness in your spine. At the end of the shift, there's no warm locker room, no tea. You just trudge back the way you came, your shadow long against the frostbitten buildings. The city is quieter, now people moving slower, conserving energy. The work has drained them too. As you walk, a wind kicks up, sharp and sudden. It cuts straight through your coat and slaps you across the back of the neck. You curse under your breath and duck into a stairwell. There, huddled beside a chimney vent, you find a girl no older than 8. She's barefoot, wearing a man's shirt like a dress. She's rubbing her arms, teeth chattering. Her eyes meet yours. She doesn't speak. You take off your scarf and hand it to her. She nods, wide-eyed, wraps it around her shoulders like it's a holy relic. Then you leave, because if you stop too long, you'll freeze. That's the rule. Warmth is always temporary. Survival is earned one miserable moment at a time. And when you finally reach your building, the hallway smells of ash and damp wool. You climb the stairs on trembling legs and crawl into your icy nest of fabric and fatigue. Outside, the frost creeps silently across window panes. And inside, you try not to dream of warmth, because dreams make waking up worse. You wake to the sound of coughing again. It's a different pitch this time, deeper, wetter, more urgent. The room next door. Probably the old man who sells pencils on Cheapside. You haven't seen him at his spot in days. That cough's been getting louder, longer. You pull your blanket tighter, as if you can shut it out, but you can't. Not the noise, not the smell, because it's not just cold anymore. It's sick. Winter in Victorian London is the season of illness. It moves through the city like a phantom, hitching rides on breath, lingering on doorknobs, soaking into fabrics and lungs. And with the cold tightening its grip, the sick can't warm up, and the healthy don't stay healthy for long. You sit up slowly, body protesting. It's warmer under your blanket, but that's not saying much. The condensation from your breath has frozen along your scarf. You peel it off and feel the sting where it tugs at your skin. The air smells sour. Someone threw up down the hall during the night. Again, you go to the basin, break the ice over the top, and splash water on your face. The shock helps clear your thoughts. Kind of. You've been breathing shallow ever since the girl from upstairs died last week. Just 8 years old. Fever took her fast. One day she was giggling in the stairwell. The next, silent. Historians agree that respiratory illness was a dominant killer in London during the Victorian period, particularly in winter. Pneumonia, bronchitis, tuberculosis. They didn't just weaken people. They hunted. You walk down the street and see the evidence everywhere. Red-nosed boys hawking phlegmy coughs. Grandmothers clutching their chests as they wheeze. Doctors rushing through doorways with black bags and thin hope. And here's the grim irony. The colder it gets, the closer people huddle together for warmth, which means every breath, every cough, every shiver is shared. The tenements act like echo chambers for illness. If one person gets it, the whole block does. A strange little tidbit. Victorian apothecaries sold inhalers that looked like tiny teapots. You'd pour in a minty concoction, hold the spout to your lips, and breathe the steam. It felt warm, sure, but it didn't cure anything. It just gave the illusion of relief. A placebo you paid for in shillings you couldn't afford. Out in the street now, you head toward the dispensary. It's always crowded in the winter, people lined up for hours, waiting to be seen, hoping for quinine, or laudanum, or just a clean handkerchief and someone to say they'll be all right. You pass by a woman sobbing on the steps. Her baby's bundled up tight, but the bundle doesn't move. You walk faster. The doctor's office smells like camphor and cold sweat. Inside, the queue snakes around the hallway, full of limp bodies and glassy stares. A young man behind you leans on the wall, wheezing. You give him space, but there's no real space here. Everyone's pressed together, coughing into sleeves, clearing throats, blowing noses into the same rag again and again. One doctor, no nurse. A girl from the charity mission hands out broth. It's barely warm, but it's something. You take a sip. It tastes like wet hay and copper, but you don't complain. Your own throat's been hurting, and you're not about to tempt fate by mocking free soup. Historians still debate whether the Victorian miasma theory, the idea that bad smells caused illness, did more harm than good. It wasn't entirely wrong. Bad air often did mean bad health conditions. But it ignored the real culprit, germs. And until germ theory caught on later in the century, people focused more on perfume than pasteurization. You remember a neighbour pouring vinegar on her floorboards to purify the air. The stink was worse than the illness, but she swore by it. So did the newspapers. They printed entire guides for preventing the winter ague, most of which involved opening windows, burning herbs, and avoiding melancholy thoughts. And yet, the deaths kept coming. By noon, you hear the bells again. Funeral bells, dull, rhythmic, far off, but never gone. They toll so often in winter they start to blend into the background noise like chimney sweeps and cartwheels and coughing. You don't even need to ask who died anymore. It's always someone. You just hope it isn't someone you know. As you walk home, the street vendors are quieter. No one wants hot eels or roasted chestnuts when they're too sick to chew. The chimney smoke clings to your coat, but it's the smell of disease that follows you, the musty tang of too many bodies, too little space, and nowhere warm enough to stop the spread. You pass a preacher on the corner, shouting into the wind about sin and punishment. "The Lord's hand is heavy in winter," he cries. You're not so sure. It feels more like the city's own weight, pressing down on the weak. At the edge of your street, a cart rolls slowly past. Wooden wheels creak. Inside, a tarp covers 3 shapes. The man driving it doesn't look up. He's done this before. You climb the stairs to your room with numb feet and a heavy chest. You sit by the window and look out over the roofs, chimney stacks puffing against a dull sky. Somewhere in the city, someone is getting better. Somewhere, maybe. But here, people are just trying not to get worse. You cough. Once. Just a little tickle in the throat. You tell yourself it's nothing. Just the cold air. Just fatigue. You wrap the scarf tighter and lean back. Because there's no time for being sick. Not now. Not in this winter. Evening comes quickly now, dropping over the rooftops like a wet wool blanket. The sun, if you can call that an accurate term, has dipped behind the soot-stained skyline by just after 4. You walk slower on your way home, legs aching, breath fogging the air in soft pulses, and then you hear it again. The steady clop of hooves, the creak of wooden wheels. Another funeral cart rolls by, shrouded in cloth, with no mourners in tow. Winter is death's busy season. You follow the cart with your eyes as it turns down a narrow lane toward the parish church. There, black crape flutters from the door handles, and a sombre undertaker tips his hat to no one in particular. You've seen him often lately, more than your own friends, and his black-gloved hands always seem to be gently smoothing the folds of a shroud or lifting a small box with far too much care. In Victorian London, mourning was both an expectation and an industry. You didn't just bury the dead, you performed grief. For the wealthier classes, this meant elaborate funerals, hired mourners, black silk dresses, ostrich feathers on carriages, and mourning jewellery with the deceased's hair woven into it. But for people like you, death was simpler, quieter, still heavy. You pass by a family standing outside their building, huddled around a pine coffin no longer than your arm. The child inside must have been only 3, maybe 4. There's no hearse. Just 2 men with rope handles, waiting to carry it the last few blocks. The mother keeps adjusting her shawl like she can't quite get it to sit right. Or maybe she's trying to do something with her hands so they don't shake. Historians agree. Winter mortality rates in London were significantly higher than in warmer months. Cold weather worsened infections, made treatments harder, and delayed burials when the ground was frozen solid. Death came faster and stayed longer. Sometimes entire households were wiped out before spring returned. You arrive at the churchyard just behind another funeral. A proper one. Horse-drawn hearse, mourners in formal black, a priest in a heavy cloak. The ground here crunches underfoot, not just snow, but gravel scattered hastily to keep mourners from slipping. The grave itself is shallow. The gravediggers can't go deep in frozen ground. They work with pickaxes and prayer. You watch as the casket is lowered. A woman near you sniffles loudly. Another blows her nose. Somewhere, a child whimpers. And yet, oddly, death doesn't stop life from going on around it. Down the road, a vendor sells baked potatoes from a cart, steam rising as people pass by the cemetery gate. 2 boys laugh at something, probably not the funeral. It's just another part of their day. In a city, this full of grief, mourning becomes background noise. Here's a morbid little detail for you. Victorian funeral fashion had rules. A widow was expected to wear full mourning head to toe black, including a veil for 2 years. No collars, no dancing, no remarrying, and even the smell of mourning was coded. People used violets and lavender to cover the scent of decay. You could pass a woman in the street and know she was grieving just by the perfume. You keep walking, but death follows. It's in the shop windows, where black ribbons hang beside dusty bread loaves. It's in the advertisements. Embalming services safe, sanitary, respectable. It's even in the post letters edged in black, telling someone somewhere that their cousin has passed, that their father collapsed in the frost, that their child never woke up. And it's in the cemeteries themselves, overcrowded, layered, sometimes literally stacked with the dead. You've heard tales of gravediggers breaking into older graves by accident, bones rising like strange weeds in the cold. Some say the ground itself shifts, bloated with so many buried souls that it can't lie flat. Historians still argue whether burial practices kept up with London's explosive population growth. Some say the rise of cremation in the late century was a quiet surrender to the fact that the city had simply run out of room for its dead. You stop to rest on a bench near a small memorial garden. The ground is hard beneath you, and the chill seeps up through the wood like a warning. Across the garden, a man reads a name etched into a headstone, lips moving silently. You can't tell if he's praying or apologizing. And then, out of nowhere, snow begins to fall again. Not the sludgy grey of the last storm, but something cleaner, quieter. The flakes swirl around the gravestones, catching in the iron fencework and melting against the warmth of a nearby lantern. For a moment, the city holds its breath. Even the wind slows down. But it doesn't last. The snow will turn filthy by morning, trodden and torn by boots and wheels. The graves will vanish under a coat of soot-stained white, and the funerals will continue. You stand again, joints stiff, and begin the walk home. The sky is dark now, and smoke curls from the chimneys in long, slow spirals. Each one feels like a sigh, like the city exhaling all the names it can't remember. You pass another cart on the way back. This one's empty. For now. You wake hungry. Not the kind of hunger that grumbles and groans like an impatient dog, but the quiet kind. The kind that simply is, like the cold in your bones or the damp in your blankets. You're used to it now. Victorian winters don't lend themselves to full bellies. You rub your eyes, stretch your fingers, and take stock. A crust of bread on the windowsill, frozen, a heel of cheese gone hard and speckled. You nibble around the edge. Breakfast. Then it's back outside, where the city's appetite mirrors your own. Never full, always gnawing. You head down toward the market stalls, hoping to spot something warm, or at least edible. Smoke curls from vendors' braziers, and your nose leads you first. Roasted chestnuts, fried fish, boiled potatoes, meat pies, but most of it's just out of reach. Coins jingle faintly in your pocket, but they don't add up to much. You settle on a stall run by a woman with cracked hands and a cough that won't quit. She's selling boiled puddings and jellied eels, and you pick the cheaper option-own wedge of congealed suet and potato. It's barely warm. The vendor wraps it in yesterday's newspaper and hands it to you with a half smile. God keep you, she mutters. Victorian street food, historians agree, was both a blessing and a gamble. It fed the poor, kept workers moving, but it was often unsanitary and occasionally lethal. The cold helped. Ironically, it preserved meat longer and slowed spoilage. But frozen meat pies weren't exactly comforting, and cold stew feels more like punishment than nourishment. You walk as you eat, stepping over icy puddles and dodging carts. The city moves slowly in the cold. Horses strain at the weight of deliveries. Vendors hunch low over their fires. Children sell matches on corners, their fingers blue and voices hoarse. One girl waves a tray of hot chestnuts at Yawns for a penny, but you shake your head. No use spending your last coin so early. The taverns do a brisk trade in winter too. You duck into one just for warmth. Inside, the heat hits like a slap-your-face prickles as your skin thaws. Men sit shoulder to shoulder on benches, sipping weak ale and shouting across the haze. The hearth is ablaze with wood and coal, and someone's roasting meat on a spit. But you're not here to eat. You're just borrowing the heat. A wiry man beside you offers a sip of his drink. Just ginger wine, he says. It burns your throat and wakes your brain. He laughs. That's the ticket. Warms you better than a blanket. You nod, thankful, and he launches into a tale about last year's frostbite that cost him 2 toes. Right foot's lighter now, he jokes, winking. You both laugh, but the sound is tight, tired. Here's a quirky little fact. The Victorian poor often made soup from anything animal bones. Carrot peelings, stale bread, and even sheep heads if they could get them. Head broth, they called it. Not pretty, not delicious, but it filled a pot and made a meal stretch through the week. You've eaten it before. You probably will again. Back on the street, you pass a butcher's shop. The window's frosted over, but you can make out sides of beef hanging in rows, ribs exposed, hooves still attached. Inside, the butcher sharpens his cleaver with a rhythm like clockwork. A woman buys a scrap of fatchest. The fatand nods her thanks. You keep walking, past a bakery where the bread's already sold out, past a fishmonger whose cod are frozen stiff, past a fruit seller with baskets of wrinkled apples, the skin puckered from frost. He's got them half buried in sawdust to keep the ice off, but it's not working. Historians still argue whether the Victorian diet worsened in winter because of scarcity or simply lack of preservation. Either way, variety dropped sharply. Fresh produce became rare. Milk often froze solid before reaching homes, and water drawn from wells had to be chipped apart before it could be boiled. You stop at a stall offering hot soup on credit, if the woman believes you'll pay later. You ask for a ladleful. It's thin and mostly onions, but it's hot. You wrap your hands around the tin cup and let the steam wash over your face. It feels like heaven. Across the street, a man tries to sell roasted sparrows on skewers for a penny. You've heard they taste like coppery string, but at least they're meat. He waves one at a passing copper, who waves him off. They're for the cats then, he mutters. Lunch is done, if you can call it that, and the sky is already dimming again. You don't bother checking the hour. Time is measured in light and hunger now. On your way back toward your alley, you pass a charity kitchen. There's a queue, always a queue, but it smells promising. Inside, Women in bonnets ladle out broth and offer stale bread. A preacher says grace, his voice hoarse from repetition. You don't step inside. Not today. Not yet. You don't want to owe anyone. Not even soup. You head home with a belly barely touched by warmth and a mind full of cold calculations. Tomorrow's dinner will depend on luck, weather, and whose generous are desperate enough to hire you. Tonight, you'll nibble what's left of your bread, maybe soak it in water if your teeth hurt. The food might be cold, but at least you'll be alive to chew it. And in winter, that's enough. The evening wind slaps your face the moment you step back outside, and it carries more than just cold, it carries whispers, muttered curses, the scrape of boots on cobbles, and the rustle of someone slipping into the shadows. You tug your coat tighter, eyes flicking over your shoulder. In Victorian London, winter isn't just a test of endurance, it's an opportunity, and not for anything good. The nights are longer now, which means more cover, more hours to hide, more time for desperate men to do desperate things. You start down a narrow side street, boots crunching on frost and filth, and your shoulders go up instinctively, because this is the time of day when the city changes shape. Gaslight flickers, fog rolls low, and suddenly alleys feel tighter. Every echo grows teeth. You pass a figure leaning in a doorway, his hat's low, coat collar high. He watches you without moving. You don't stop. Victorian winter crime isn't the stuff of polite conversation. It's the stuff whispered between market stalls and behind gloved hands. Pickpockets, yes, but also cut purses, robbers, gang lookouts, and the ever-present threat of being followed. There are the area sneak boys, who slip into basements to snatch silver, the scuttlers, teenage gangs who prowl for anyone weaker than themselves, and of course, the footpads muggers of the old school, with fists like hammers and blades sharper than the cold. Historians agree that winter was peak season for petty crime. The cover of darkness, the distraction of freezing fingers fumbling with coin possessit, all made for easy targets. And in neighborhoods like yours, survival sometimes was a crime. You slip through a crowd gathered around a burning barrel. Eyes meet yours, sizing you up. Friend or fool? Got food? Got coal? One man offers you a drink from a bottle. You shake your head. He laughs. Suit yourself, mate. Warms more than tea. He takes another swig, then stumbles away, vanishing into the steam and smoke. You pass a shop that was robbed last night. The glass is boarded up already. A boy inside sweeps, but he's not cleaning. He's watching, guarding. His eyes meet yours, and for a second, you see someone just as scared as you are. The rumors have been circling for days body snatchers are back. Resurrection men, they're called, and they don't care if you're buried or just sleeping rough. Fresh corpses bring a tidy profit for medical schools, especially during the cold months when the ground is too hard to dig without noise. But some don't dig at all. Some wait for the coughing to stop, then move fast. Fringe reports from the East End speak of entire families sleeping in shifts, not just to stay warm, but to guard the bodies of their dead. There's a chill in your spine that has nothing to do with the temperature. You take a detour, heading up a better-lit road. A constable walks past, steam rising from his shoulders like he's just escaped a furnace. He nods politely, but doesn't stop. They rarely do. Protection costs money, even if it's unofficial. Here's a strange detail for you. In the 1860s, some shops began installing booby traps to deter thieves' wires that triggered bells, or hidden spring-loaded doors that could lock a thief inside until morning. You pass one now, a hat shop with a sign, "Night visitors beware." You believe it. As you turn onto a quieter lane, the air feels tighter. A man steps into your path, hands in his pockets. He doesn't say anything, just watches. You move sideways, not stopping, not speeding up. He doesn't follow, not tonight. You duck into a courtyard and rest against a wall. Your heart thuds in your throat. The cold bites harder here, far from the braziers and chatter. The darkness isn't just a backdrop, it's a participant. Every shadow could be someone, and every silence could mean danger. A light cough behind you makes you jump. A boy barely 9 sits on a crate with his arms wrapped around his knees. He's got nothing. No gloves. No hat. Just that far-off look of someone who hasn't eaten in days. You pull a crust of bread from your pocket and hand it over. He grabs it like it might vanish. No thanks. Just bites. You don't blame him. Back on the main road, you pass a brothel where the windows glow amber. Inside, laughter, silk, warmth. at least for those who can afford itter who sell enough of themselves to earn it. Outside, a woman leans on the rail, shivering in satin. Her breath plumes in the lamplight like a ghost. "Need company, love?" she asks with a smile that's more reflex than invitation. You shake your head, and she nods, no offence taken. Just another offer declined. Historians still debate how much crime in the Victorian winter was truly criminal, and how much was simply desperation dressed in ragged coats. After all, stealing bread isn't murder. Breaking a window to get warm isn't violence. But the law didn't see it that way, nor did most of London. You reach your street again, your boots dragging, your eyes darting one last time over your shoulder. You've made it. Another night without incident. Another quiet victory. You climb the stairs to your room and lock the door twice. You sit by the window and look out. Snow falls again, lazy and slow. Somewhere, someone screams. Somewhere else, laughter. In this city, it's hard to tell which is more unsettling. And still the cold creeps in through the cracks. The next morning brings no sun, no warmth, and no real change. Just the same aching cold that's burrowed into your bones and set up camp. You've given up hoping for surprises. But today, you're reminded of something even more brutal than frostbitten fingers or the taste of watery stew. Poverty in winter doesn't just kill, it decides who survives. You rise slowly, layering your clothes with stiff hands, and glance toward the hearth. Still empty. No coal left. You press your hand to the side of the kettle, eats as cold as a stone. The rags stuffed under your windows haven't stopped the draft. You can see your breath. You can see your every breath. So you head out, not toward work, not today, toward a pawn shop instead. You pass neighbours on the stairs doing the same. A man with an old pocket watch, a woman carrying a wooden chair, a child with a doll. Everyone's making the same gamble. What used to matter more than a day's heat? At the pawn shop, the line is longer than you've ever seen. Coats pulled tight, eyes down. No one speaks. A woman up front tries to exchange a locket. The pawnbroker shakes his head. Jewelry's overstocked. She swears under her breath and stumbles away. You hand over a belt and a pair of gloves you found. Not bought. He barely looks at them. "Sixpence," he says. You nod. That's a quarter of a sack of coal. Barely enough for a night. But it's something. You take the coins with frozen fingers and leave quickly, before your pride makes you change your mind. Victorian coal wasn't cheap. Not to the poor. While wealthier homes paid for regular deliveries and had servants stack it neatly in bins, families like yours bought it by the sack, sometimes by the shovelful, sometimes stolen. Coalmen hauled it door to door, wheeling carts through the slush, shouting prices, always watched like hawks by neighbours hoping for spilled lumps. You head to Coal Alley, yes. That's a real place. And yes, it lives up to its name. Smoke hangs in the air like a lazy ghost, and the air smells sharp with soot. Men shovel coal from large mounds into burlap sacks, weighing them, measuring each scoop like they're doling out medicine. You wait your turn, coins clutched tight. "Quarter sack," you say. He nods, fills it, ties it, hands it off. Heavy. You drag it home like a prize. And now, at last, the fire. You stuff paper scraps beneath the great bits of old ledger sheets. A flyer for a magician who probably froze 2 weeks ago and nestled the coal in like precious jewels. One match. It flares. Fizzles. Second match. Better. The fire takes. The heat is pitiful, barely licking the edges of the room. But you crouch beside it anyway, hands spread, face tingling as sensation returns. For the first time in days, the chill lifts just slightly. Historians agree that coal was life in Victorian London. It blackened the skies, choked the lungs, and dirtied the snow, but it was essential. Without it, the city would have frozen, and many did those who couldn't afford even a shovelful. Reports from the period note corpses found with burnt furniture in their fireplaces and chimneys clogged with paper, trash, even old shoes. Anything that burned. And here's an odd little detail. Coal thieves often included children, small enough to sneak into delivery wagons and fast enough to vanish with a few stolen lumps. Some families even sent them out on purpose, coaching them on where to run and how to drop the coal if caught. You glance out the window now, eyes scanning the alleys. You see a boy pulling a sled with a cloth sack. Might be coal, might be potatoes, might be nothing, just something to make him look busy enough not to be noticed. You eat a small meal beside your fire-cold bread, and weak tea reheated with boiled snow. You tell yourself it's better than yesterday, and for now, it is. Later, you make your way to the parish. The coal won't last, and you've heard whispers that the vicar's fund has wood scraps. You join the queue that snakes along the stone path, everyone wrapped in more patch than fabric. Inside, the vicar's assistant hands out tokens wood, when available, sometimes blankets, sometimes nothing. You receive a folded note. Return tomorrow. Not helpful. Not today. Outside, a woman collapses on the steps. Not from illness, from cold. People gather around, trying to lift her, fan her, warm her with scarves. Someone shouts for a doctor, but no one moves. She stirs. Eyes flutter. Someone gives her a sip of broth. She'll live for now. You help carry her inside. You don't know her name. Doesn't matter. Everyone is someone in the winter. Historians still debate whether Victorian charity helped more than it harmed. Some say soup kitchens, clothing drives, and coal allowances saved lives. Others argue they created cycles of dependence and stripped dignity away. You wouldn't know. You're just trying not to freeze. That night, you feed your tiny fire the last of the coal. The flame flickers, as if unsure whether to try. You sit close, knees drawn up, watching it like it might tell you tomorrow's fate. You hear coughing down the hall again, then a baby crying, then silence. The fire crackles once, then settles into steady breathing. You close your eyes, and hope. You wake in darkness not because it's night, but because the light just hasn't arrived yet. Morning in winter feels like an extension of sleep, with grey shadows and cold air stretching out like fingers, pressing against your cheeks, your ribs, your thoughts. You blink, and frost glitters faintly on the inside of the window, a delicate lace that beauty forgot to warm. There's no more coal, no fire. The hearth sits still and black, like a scolded pet. Your breath rises in soft puffs above the blankets. You lie there, listening. A door creaks. A spoon clinks. A cough, 2 floors down, goes unanswered. Today's cold is not dramatic. It's not a windstorm or a snow squall. It's the creeping kind. The kind that finds the spaces between your clothes and your skin, that waits patiently for your shoes to wear through, that sees your tired posture and takes 1 more inch from your spine. You get up, slowly. Every layer you pull on feels heavier than the last. Wool against wool, against cotton, against damp. You wrap your scarf high around your face and step out the door into a world not changed, just quieter in its cruelty. The streets are brittle with frost. Even the air feels thinner. There's no snow today, just a steady, relentless chill. And there's a mood in the city that you've learned to recognize. The way people keep their heads lower, the way doors open more slowly, the way laughter, if it happens at all, ends quickly and quietly. This is the final freeze. When winter stops playing and starts claiming, you walk toward the mission chapel not for prayer, but because the rumor says they have bread today, maybe even soup. The line is already forming, people stamping their feet, rubbing their hands, looking at the sky like they expect it to apologize. It doesn't. Near the chapel wall, a body slumps on the steps. A woman. You can't tell if she's sleeping, unconscious, or gone. No one touches her. Not yet. Not because they don't care, but because they're afraid they do. Finally, a man kneels and gently presses a hand to her neck. He looks up, shakes his head. One of the sisters comes out with a blanket, drapes it over her head. There's no scream, just an adjustment of the line. Historians agree that deaths from exposure spiked during these last cold snaps, when bodies were too weak to fight and hope too threadbare to dress in. The newspapers would later report 10 found frozen in their beds, or child discovered in alley, as if winter had simply scooped them up in its arms and wandered off. You get your bread, half a loaf, still warm. You tear it with numb fingers and savour the steam that rises off it as if it were roast goose. The woman beside you sucks on a corner of hers like a sugar cube. Neither of you speak. Here's a strange fact. Some people swore by rubbing their skin with goose fat to stay warm, particularly those who worked outdoors. It's sealed in body heat, supposedly. You've never tried it. You're not sure you could stand the smell, but you understand the desperation behind the idea. As you walk back toward home, a girl with a bandaged hand tries to sell matches. Her voice is hoarse. Her coat is a boy's coat, too big and too thin. She offers you a bundle for a halfpenny. You don't have it. You shake your head. She smiles anyway. The city starts to close down around you, like it's curling up for sleep. Shops that used to fight to stay open now shutter by dusk. Coal merchants don't even call out anymore, they just sit on their carts, bundled in old coats, staring at the road like something might come along to change things. You reach your block. A neighbour waves, then keeps walking. Another man sits on the steps, bundled in rags, unmoving. You check, just in case. He's breathing. Asleep. You wrap his coat tighter around him and move on. Upstairs, your room is waiting. Cold. Still. You light the last of your candle. Watch it flicker. You don't bother trying the hearth. The fire's gone out for good. You sit on your cot, hands on your knees. The candlelight glints on the frosty window pane, and outside, snow finally starts to fall again. But this time, it's soft, quiet, clean, even. The kind of snow you remember from stories. The kind you wish had fallen 2 months ago. And as you watch, for the first time all week, the silence feels peaceful. You stay by the window as the snow falls, slow and silent, blanketing rooftops, muffling wheels, softening footsteps. The city's sharp edges blur beneath it. Chimney tops wear sleepy white caps. Gas lamps flicker like distant stars. Even the air seems to hush, like London has finally exhaled. You pull your blanket tighter, letting the folds cocoon your shoulders. The frost at the edge of the glass glows gently in the candlelight. You can see your reflection, now tired eyes, flushed nose, the pale outline of breath rising and falling, and behind it, the city at rest. Far below, someone laughs faint, muffled, just one note. Somewhere else, a violin plays. It's out of tune, but it's music. You close your eyes and imagine you're warm just for a moment, that the fire is roaring, that your belly is full, that outside, the snow is clean and sweet, and tomorrow brings something brighter than cold. And as you drift towards sleep, the world softens, the wind quiets, the candle burns lower. Even the memories of frost and hunger begin to fade into the warmth of imagined spring. You let your breathing slow. Let the weight of the day slip from your shoulders. Let the silence hold you. Because for now, the night is gentle, and you've made it through. Good night. Sweet dreams.